Um, we move to the final session today on day 4. We're switching gears slightly over here. The focus of this session is now on open research. And some of you may know that open research is a practice of science in such a way that others can collaborate, contribute, reuse research data, and so on. So it's a pleasure to be joined today by the team from F1000. We have two speakers here with us, Sheridan Willis and Diksha Awasthi. Sheridan is the senior associate publisher at F1000. She works in life and health sciences, and she manages the funder platforms, including Welcome Open Research. Welcome, Sheridan. That's really lovely to have you. And we also have Diksha Awasthi. Diksha is an assistant manager at F1000 in India, and her role is focused on relationships, supporting authors in India. And together, Sheridan and Diksha are going to talk about open research, where we're going to have a discussion about open research, its importance in a landscape like India, and some established publishing models through open research platform. And I must say, Sheridan and Diksha, that I'm very happy that the first paper that was published for the IRMI initiative was actually published in Welcome Open Research, and we've benefited enormously from that. So on that note, welcome to the session, and over to you to talk us through open research.
Thank you so much, Dr. Savita, for that wonderful introduction and really glad to know about the paper. Thank you for mentioning that. And thank you all for joining the session today. So let me quickly introduce the session to all of you. So what we're going to talk here today, and as Dr. Savita rightly mentioned, that we will give you a brief overview of open research, some practical steps for researchers and institutions, and then we are going to do a deep dive into F1000 research, which is what we want to highlight and talk about, which is an open research publishing platform. We're going to talk about the publishing model, some ways of partnership, and also mention about the Welcome Open Research, Welcome Trust and DBT India Alliance that Dr. Savita mentioned. So without further ado, I would like to discuss first what open research is to set some context to this session. So in the recent years, the discussions around academia and publishing, there has been a lot of conversation around open access. And this is around the availability of journal articles for anybody to read, regardless of whether they have a subscription or not. But open research is about moving the conversation beyond open access publications. And we're looking at how the entire research life cycle can be opened up. Even when a journal might not be open access, researchers can still use open research processes to make their research more open and more transparent. And one of the key aims of open research is to increase reproducibility and transparency of research. So as you can see on your screen, this is a definition of open research, which is derived from Foster Open Science, which highlights that open processes are freely available. They enable reuse, redistribution, and reproduction of the research and its life cycle. So that's what open research is about. And why does open research matter? It matters because it enables discoverability. It has value and impact. It increases the efficiency by maximizing use of research and reducing the duplication and also reducing the research waste. It also talks about the good governance and enables the researchers through transparency and accountability. Careers and capacity, they give credit recognition to contributors through credit taxonomy and incentives by publishing on open research or an open access platform. And it also has a greater impact in the researcher community and within the researchers as well by increasing citation potential, and also has a very good clarity on expertise. So all of this is interconnected, and that's what constitutes open research essentially. And just to give a brief idea of what these terminologies are that fall under open research. So one of the most important aspects of open research, and let me here also highlight that open science, open research, and open scholarship are interchangeable terms. So if any one of us says open science or open scholarship, it essentially means open research, and that's what we're talking about here today. So open access is the research articles are freely available to read online, and that's the basic definition of what open access is. And open science includes open access, but is also comprised of sharing of data, code, preprints, registered reports, and other things as well. and also what open data and open sharing is, which we're going to talk about later as well, a little bit. So sharing of the data behind any research study, which is also fair data policy that Sheridan will mention in a presentation as well. Open peer review, being able to submit registered reports, a sharing of research plan online in advance of data collection. So these are some of the important terminologies that we use when we strike a narrative on open research and open access. Now, on the screen, you can see a very general science focused research workflow. So, a researcher might have an idea, and then they would design an hypothesis to contest or measure that idea. And then they will design an experiment which collects data, yields some results, and then they use that to draw some conclusions. And then they write that study and look for a journal or a book to publish that piece of research. And open access has a very much been focused on the availability of these manuscripts that have been published in a journal. Now, open research is also a cross-sector initiative. Now, when people thought about publishing, that they would think about the end part of the cycle, but publishing openly, researchers can share their data, open methods, and open their whole cycle of the research process. And we are increasingly seeing this in funder mandates as well. For open research, it is very much funder driven. Open access is linked with the final version of the research, as you can see, the one which is highlighted in yellow, which is basically means opening up earlier outputs or the parts of the whole research process. So this was constitutes open research, and it essentially is a cross-sector initiative comprising of all these sectors that we talked about. Now, how does open science help the move towards responsible research? What does it essentially mean, and what does it look like in practice? Now, in the traditional publishing model, the research article is the only public output of research, leaving much time, effort, and value hidden beneath the surface. So, all of these things are basically hidden behind the iceberg, and the only thing that is available for the researchers to see is the research article, which is the final version. And this is what traditional publishing workflow looks like. Now, however, the open science publishing model, which F1000 has adopted and which Sheridan will talk about later in the presentation, completely changes that by bringing as much as possible out into the open. Now, all research outputs, including the data and code, can be shared with the researchers, and all of the credit is also given to them for their work. Articles can be published rapidly without any restrictions and can be assessed transparently through open peer review process. And all of these elements combine, enhance trust, and build a responsible research culture. So the benefits for researchers is that it increases the impact of their research and opportunity for collaboration within the researcher community. So you can see all of this comes above the iceberg and is clearly visible. It increases the transparency and also advocates for it. So this is how open science has brought about a drastic shift from traditional model of publishing, and this is what it essentially looks like in an illustration. Now, just to give you a brief idea on what exactly we're talking about today, to introduce F1000 and the holistic approach that F1000 takes towards publishing ensures that all elements of the process are as visible and transparent as possible, which is opposed to the more traditional process publishing workflow that we have. Now, F1000's open science approach ensures that the full story of the research is shared with the community, and that's what we are striving towards. F1000 is an open access scholarly publisher by Taylor and Francis Group that is one of the world's leading academic publishers. F1000 offers a range of open science publishing portfolio. It also provides open research publishing solutions and services to organizations such as the European Commission, Wellcome Trust, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as directly to our researchers through our F1000 research publishing platform, which I'm going to talk about in a while. F1000 works across the globe with funders, societies, and associations and research institutes and offers end-to-end publishing solutions and services. Its model combines the speed of a preprint server, the rigor of the peer review, and the transparency of open research. Now, this is a screenshot of some of our publishing portfolio. As mentioned that we work across the globe with funders, societies and association and research institutions to offer end-to-end services. Moreover, I just want to mention an important aspect here that F1000 is providing independent end-to-end tailoring solutions for an expanding number of high-profile funding agencies as well and organizations, as I mentioned earlier, including the European Commission, African Academy of Sciences, a special initiative on tropical diseases program of the World Health Organization, and more. So our publishing services that are offered by F1000 are also entirely compliant with the increasing number of research funder and institution open access policies, including Plan S, while also providing features and functionality to support more collaborative and open science ways of working. For example, making research data and materials easy to publish and share. Now, I would also like to draw your attention to our flagship open research publishing platform, which is F1000 Research. It's an open research platform which was launched in 2013 by the F1000 company with a goal to rethink the scholarly communication system, to redesign the whole publication workflow and the research process around good principles of open science, reproducibility, transparency, and to reduce the waste. As you can see, we're also indexed in Scopus amongst other indexes like PubMed, DOHA, and more. And we come into the quartile 1 in Scopus under the subject areas that are mentioned on your screen, which gives us credibility and also maximizes the discoverability of the content on F1000 research. Now, from here onwards, I would like to pass on to my co-presenter Sheridan. But before doing that, it is worth reiterating that while we are talking about partnership at this point, individual researchers can also submit directly without any affiliation to F1000 Research. And we have a link here, which basically means that even if you're not affiliated to any institution or any funders or any other gateways that we have on our platform, you can still submit your research on f1000research.com. The link is already here. And with this, I would like to pass on to Sheridan to take up the presentation ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Diksha. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. So for the next portion of the presentation, I'm going to be talking through, as Diksha said, the F1000 publishing model and how it works and how it kind of differs to traditional journal formats. And then I'll also be following it up with some examples of ways in which we've collaborated with varying partners. Next slide, please. So through this diagram, I'm going to kind of talk you through our publishing model. And this really applies to any peer-reviewed articles that are submitted across our platforms and gateways. We refer to our publishing model as beyond open access. And that's because whilst open access is the foundation block, we really do open up as much of the publishing and research process as we can, with the core aim of maximising the potential for use and reuse of research. So to start with, the research output is then submitted to our platform, and we then make a number of checks to ensure that the author and article scope fall under the parameters of what is required for publication on our platforms. Our editorial team will carry out a number of pre-publication checks to ensure that all our policies are adhered to. So that includes our open data and open software policies. And really, we're looking for good science, which can include smaller studies, null and negative results, and other research outputs that you might not be able to publish in traditional journals. So assuming that all these checks are passed, the article is original and ethical guidelines have been followed, the article and its associated data will then be published live on the platform. So once the article is published live, it will then be assigned a DOI and will be immediately citable, and as well as indexed in Google Scholar. And then this then triggers our post-publication peer review process. So as you can see, this differs from traditional journals in the way that we conduct open peer review on the live article itself. So the peer review process is author-led, with authors suggesting referees for our editorial team to invite on their behalf. Our editorial team are there to kind of ensure that the reviewers suggested meet our criteria, as well as making sure there's no conflict of interest between the authors and the reviewers themselves before they're invited to review said article. The reviewers' reports are then published online next to the article, alongside the name and affiliation of each reviewer. The reviewers have the option to select one of 3 statuses to the article. So it's either approved, approved with reservations, or not approved, which I think is shown just below the open peer review and user commenting bit there. This then leads to the kind of the cyclical part of the process. So authors can then, if we just go back one slide, sorry. Thanks. So authors can then choose to revise their paper, addressing and responding to the reviewers' comments. And with any new versions of their article also being published, we'll send that back to the reviewers if necessary for further comments, and the peer review status can then be updated accordingly. So in order for an article to pass peer review and be sent to relevant indexes and repositories, a paper either needs 2 approved statuses, so 2 reviewers need to approve the paper and assign those 2 green ticks that we can see, or it needs 1 approved and 2 approved with reservation statuses, so those are the ones denoted by the green question mark. Next slide. Thank you. So that was kind of an overview of the publishing process that we follow at F1000 Research Platform and across all our other platforms. But another unique aspect of our model is that we also support this publication of a diversity of peer-reviewed article options. The idea is that we want to open up and showcase the whole research lifecycle by enabling varying article types in addition to those traditional research articles. The aim is to support the use, reuse, and reproducibility of research from initial concept, planning, collecting, and analysing phases. So we have actually found that these article types are really great, particularly with early career researchers, as it helps to build them a profile and get credit for their contribution to the research project, whether that's to design a methodology or data analysis or any research software that they may have contributed to as well. Next slide. So in addition to these peer-reviewed article types, we also support publication of non-peer-reviewed research outputs that consist of documents, posters, slides, technical reports, policy guidelines, and impact reports, for instance. I think we recognise the importance of these research outputs, and we elevate the status and discoverability of these outputs, which might otherwise just be on an individual researcher's website and not easily findable or usable. So how we approach these is we use professional publishing services again. So these are still subject to editorial checks from our team, but are not applicable for peer review. They're still published with an open access license and assigned a DOI, so they are citable. And we're also going to show the same usage metrics such as downloads and views to each of those. They also have a commenting functionality like the peer-reviewed articles do. So this is very much in line with DORA, for example, which focuses on shifting to a more holistic view of research outputs. Next slide. So I'll just be talking through some of our partnerships that we have here at F1000, and this slide really kind of gives a snapshot of some of the global partners we work with in varying ways, including some of the partners that we do have out in India. Slide. So we have a number of ways that we can collaborate with partners. The first is through an open access agreement, which enables publication across venues. The second is through launching a gateway or being an affiliate to a gateway on one of our already existing platforms. And the third is to really build a new publishing venue, so a new platform specifically for the partner using the F1000 model itself. Next slide. So these next few slides, I'm just really going to give some examples of kind of some of the partnerships that we have. So this is an example of a partner gateway that we launched last year in October with the Manipal Academy of Higher Education, or MAHE Gateway, on F1000 Research. So after discussions with our team here at F1000, including Diksha, it was clear that MAHE wanted a publication venue to suit their researchers, and we were able to provide a publishing solution on our main platform, F1000 Research. MAHE in particular were motivated by our article diversity, being able to support their researchers' journey, and the gateway would be a venue for MAHE researchers to rapidly disseminate their research findings. So by employing that sound science ethos that we have, so by this I mean we're ensuring scientific rigor in the methods used, F1000 was able to be a lower barrier to entry for publication than some of the more highly selective journals that we find elsewhere. So by creating a gateway on our already established F1000 research platform, it allows for articles that have passed peer review to be indexed in Scopus, PubMed, and Medline, for instance, as F1000 research had already received those indexing statuses within those bibliographic databases. And yeah, just to kind of go over the highlights, that's already been proving pretty popular with MAHE researchers. And since our launch last year, we've published almost 100 articles on that gateway. And so yeah, now I'll talk about Welcome Open Research. So this is another one of our flagship platforms that was launched in collaboration with the funder Welcome, and it's what I manage on a day-to-day basis here at F1000. So Welcome were driven to have a venue for their researchers to be able to publish their findings, and wanted to ensure the costs of publishing their research was also cost effective too. This also helped align with Welcome's open access policy, which mandates for their researchers to publish their results to be openly available to all. So Welcome Open Research was launched in November 2016 and provides a venue for original research that is funded or co-funded by Welcome. The platform is what we call Diamond Open Access, in that there are no author-facing charges to publish here. To be eligible to publish, you must provide a Welcome grant number at submission, and if your article is accepted for publication, then Welcome themselves cover the article processing charges. So again, this is just another way that they're trying to reduce those barriers to publication for their grantees. So since launching, we have seen some truly incredible growth on the platform. And for the last 2 years, Welcome Open Research has become the #1 publishing venue for their researchers to publish in. And it looks like we're actually on track to retain that title again for the 2022 publications. So as I've mentioned, we publish a diversity of article types across the platforms, and on Welcome Open Research, we can really see that demand for these novel article types. Around half of the research published on Welcome is traditional research articles, but the other 50% is made up of study protocols, data notes, method articles, and software tool articles, for instance. And again, this really helps with aligning with Welcome's mission to support their researchers throughout their research publishing lifecycle. Slide. And the final example I'll just quickly talk through is the Wellcome Trust DBT Alliance partnership. So this has been a long-standing partnership between Welcome and the Department of Biotechnology in India, which was first formed in 2008, I believe, as an equal charitable trust. So on Welcome Open Research, much like F1000 Research, we have a number of gateways to help curate research from varying Welcome funded programs. And the Wellcome Trust/DBT Alliance Gateway was launched in 2018 on the platform, with the aim of curating research from across the biomedical research community from the DBT Alliance. So since the gateway was launched, we've had 60 articles published, of which 45 have passed peer review and have been sent to indexes such as PubMed and Scopus. So the example article here from the DBT Alliance Gateway is actually from the IRMI. So yeah, thank you for choosing to publish your work with us. So this article really shows the version of the article submitted and the peer review status following the title. And alongside the right-hand side, you can see the reviewers' reports I mentioned earlier. So the green ticks for approved, alongside the names and affiliations of the reviewers that agreed to review each article. As we mentioned, the article level metrics are also shown next to each article. And for the articles published via this partnership on the DBT Gateway, there have been over 45,000 views to all the articles within the Gateway, as well as over 4,300 downloads. So you can really see the impact and influence of the research being conducted and curated within this Gateway and Welcome Open Research. And then finally, I'll just end today's talk with what we believe are some of the benefits of publishing with F1000. So really, I hope we've shown the ways that we do hopefully accelerate access and that rapid open access publishing. So combining that preprint and post-publication peer review. I hope I've highlighted the diversity of article and format options we have available and shown that it really is an author-led and open peer review process. So we have a wide variety of publishing peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed research across our platforms, all with iterative, updatable versioning of all articles as well. And we also do the collaborative publishing with a varying number of partners, and are also able to provide author trainings and workshops if needed. And with that, I'll thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Sheridan and Diksha, for that wonderful talk, introduction to open research and options through the F1000 platform. Also great to hear about the Welcome Open Research Gateway for the India Alliance. That's perhaps something I'd like to come back to in a bit. We have two questions in the chat box, and I thought maybe we could just start with those. Obviously, there are concerns around the charges for open access publishing. So I'll just read out the question. So Geeta asks, can you please suggest some ways to help researchers for making their research open access, as many of them may not get funds towards open access charges from their funders, or organizations may not have the resources to support them? That is Geeta's question. And there is a similar question from Madhuri. Open access charges are quite steep, especially for researchers in India. Any thoughts on making these more appropriate to each country? And most funding organizations are coming out with policies on open access funding. This could be welcome, which you've just discussed, of course, but NIHR UK, NHMRC Australia. Since we are at a conference of research managers and we have staff from research offices, Madhuri's question is, any advice on how research offices should guide their researchers across these issues, especially the charges? Maybe Sheridan, I'd request you to speak to that.
Yeah, no, both very great questions, and can see how they're interlinked. So I should have mentioned, so the way that F1000 in particular are kind of working with partners across India, we appreciate that open access charges are quite high. F1000, as Diksha mentioned, we align with Plan S, so we have that price transparency. So our APC charges are a lot less than what you probably get in traditional journals, and we have to show the value of the APC in that. However, we still recognise that because India falls outside of the kind of Hanari Research for Life partnership programme, we are looking at ways of working with varying Indian institutions to make the APCs much more affordable. So actually what I will say is for the Mahe Gateway in particular, I should have called this out earlier, is actually the APCs on there for all research articles or for all article types published across there is actually $650, which is about half the price of our actual traditional research article APC. So we're hoping that that is making it a bit more affordable for Indian researchers. And like I said, we're seeing good numbers getting published across that gateway. So hopefully that is making things a little bit better. And yet the other part about funders, obviously mandating for open access, obviously Wellcome decided to put money where their mouth is and provide welcome open research for their researchers and make sure that those researchers didn't have to pay for those funds. Another one of the venues that I do work with here is NIHR Open Research. So we just launched that platform a few months ago, actually. And whilst that we do charge APCs on that platform, NIHR are then seeking to provide for all new grantees. So they just updated their open access policy back in April, I believe, and it started to be implemented in June. All new grantees to NIHR funds then have a separate envelope of money associated, if you like, for covering open access charges. So in order to publish those research, the funders are kind of coming around to this way of making that research more open and equitable for all. But yeah, there are different ways that I think not just F1000, but publishers in general are trying to work with researchers in India in particular.
Thank you so much. And I just come back to this point about the gateway. So Mahe, I also saw LV Prasad on your slide. We do have attendees from several different kinds of institutions here today. What would your advice be? So if any institution like Mahe wants to set up gateway, presumably that incurs an institutional cost. So I don't know if you could comment a little bit about the process for that. Mahe has been a good demonstration of the benefits, but how does this work? How can an institution initiate this process?
Leave that one for Diksha, because yeah, we have obviously the sales team that liaise with these institutions.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Sheridan, and thank you, Dr. Savita. I think that's a very important question. So if any institution is interested in partnering with F1000, they could reach out to me. And once we need to understand what the requirements are of those institutions, and then accordingly, we can offer a variety of different partnerships that we have. So I think that discussion first needs to happen, wherein we understand how we can support them in their open research movement, understand what is the kind of output they have in open research and what are the gaps that they're trying to fulfill by partnering with a publisher like F1000, which is an open access publishing platform. So the very first step for institutions or even for academics who are here right now affiliated to institutions is for you to reach out to us and then have a discussion with us, share your thought process around open research, let us know what exactly you need to do, what are your various institutional mandates and what your funding is like, and then how we can support you further. So case by case basis, we happy to take up whatever the requirements are and then offer a publishing solution to the institutions accordingly.
Awesome. Thank you, Sheridan. The welcome. Obviously, Welcome Open Research is a great destination for publishing science stories. But how do we work out what kind of areas of research might be supported? And the reason I ask is because we are a bunch of research administrators here. And there are interesting pieces of research on research management from India, looking for a destination to publish that kind of research as well, which is not mainstream, for example, biomedical research. So what would your advice be? And again, the other reason I ask that is because the India Alliance has a funding program for research managers. And so I was wondering whether Indian research managers who receive India Alliance funding could use this gateway to publish, just as I did, perhaps some of their research around research management. I'd just like to hear your thoughts, or maybe that's something we can discuss subsequently as well.
I
think Sheridan, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, unmute, sorry. So I think good questions there. Although we've sat and spoke about those kind of non-peer-reviewed article types, those are things that we have on F1000 research, but we currently don't have them on Welcome Open Research. However, we are in discussions with Welcome to see if we can open that up and get some of that kind of grey literature that might fall outside of the traditional peer-reviewed article types. But also I think with Welcome Open Research, we offer kind of like those open letters, things like that don't necessarily have as much data and things associated with them. And that could also be kind of a suitable venue for some of the research managers' kind of research to sit within, if you like. And in order to be able to publish on through the gateway, we do need just a Welcome grant number or the DBT Alliance grant number, I think, for that gateway. I'll have to double check that, but upon submission, it doesn't, we ask for a Welcome grant number. It doesn't have to be an active Welcome grant number either. So we encourage kind of research from a few years ago, for instance, that maybe hasn't been published elsewhere to be published via there. But that's what we check for eligibility to publish. And I think the gateway works slightly differently in that DBT Alliance kind of help look through that. But I can follow that up with yourself afterwards.
We can do that separately. Yes, yeah. We can certainly do that. I think we have run out of time, unfortunately, but for those of our colleagues who are attending your talk, I hope they can connect with you based on interest. I guess, Diksha, you're perhaps the right point of contact for partnerships, and Sheridan, maybe that's something we can follow up later subsequently about the gateway for the India Alliance. Thank you so much for taking the time to be part of our conference, and take care and bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Savita, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you again for this.
And so to all our participants, our listeners today, that brings us to the close of day 4 of the IRMI Annual Conference, and look forward to meeting you all again tomorrow for the last day. And they say that, the last is the best. So please be there to really enjoy all of the conversations tomorrow. We'll have several excellent talks on building research offices and what that means for research management careers. So see you tomorrow again at 2 p.m. Bye for now. Have a lovely evening.